Help me grow, fast or slow, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Help me learn, soft or stern, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Life's a movie, the ultimate trip. You should have been told you'd be digging for gold. Hi, welcome everybody. This is episode 19 of Digging for Gold. And of course, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, all the audio apps, and you can find them all at dangoldberg.com, my website. At the bottom, we have all the links. Check it out. Today, we have not only a good friend, an old friend, not old in age, but old in years that we've known each other, who owns a very interesting business and also helps a lot of people in this area, in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. His name is Bob Cohen. I know him as Burt, so if I could go back and forth between Bob and Burt, you'll understand. And he owns Acme Corrugated Box. We're going to find out about that company and find out about what Burt does as we move forward. Hi, Burt. How you doing?
Hi, Danny.
It's
Nice to be here.
It's great having you here.
Thank you.
Tell us about the starting.
The genesis.
The genesis. I like that. Okay. They should name a car after that and a rock group after that. But I like that, the genesis.
Well, you know, it's very interesting to start. My dad was a son of immigrants. His father was a tailor in Russia, and they immigrated sometime towards the end of the 19th century, and he had no language skills, but they had to earn a living. At that time, you really had to find work. Nobody was going to pay for you for any of your benefits. You had to find. So he became a rag merchant, and by the meaning of rags, he would cut up old clothing and use it for industrial use, for sopping up oil and things like that. So my father started with him when he was a boy. My father went to school until 8th grade, and then he had to go to work. The family was very poor.
Right.
And so my father started with his father, and then eventually broke off and went into picking up waste metal and waste paper. So that's the beginning of how he started in business. The interesting thing about that, he started at 14. The interesting thing about that, he had no education, and if you're of an ethnicity, a lot of times you didn't have access to jobs, and so what I call the dirty jobs were left to immigrants, whether they be Italian, Irish, Jewish. A lot of them gravitated towards the waste business, and that's how my dad started.
Wow! So he had rags, schmatas,
right,
is the term we would use, and paper. Right.
He had scrap metal. He would
scrap
actually,
metal.
Yeah. What he would do is he had a route of industrial printers. At that time, they would use brass and copper print plates, and once you used them, they were no good. So my father would collect them, and he would sell it to a scrapyard, which would pay him by the pound.
Right.
What was interesting is, Danny, I had my first car was a Volkswagen, which I bought with the proceeds of scrap metal that was in the basement of my dad's work.
Wow.
He said, if you want a car, you figure out a way to get to sell that scrap metal, which I did. And I think my first Volkswagen was $1,900 in 1965, I think it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you turned scrap
into a tangible piece of new equipment. Yeah.
In other words, you were digging for gold.
Digging for gold. The lesson I learned is that there's money in waste. There's money in doing things a little bit creative with product. And that's what I think my father imparted to me.
So how did it become a corrugated box company?
Well, he started to pick up used boxes. For instance, there was a Pepsi factory across the river in Camden, and they made a certain size box that the bottles came in. And my father, after they took the bottles out, they discarded the boxes. And my father would pick them up, and he knew where to sell them. And I'll explain more about that, how I learned the business. So he not only bought used boxes, but he also bought obsolete misprints from major manufacturers, and he would buy them 20 cents on the dollar, and then we would sell them for something around 60 cents or 70 cents on the dollar. Yeah.
So misprinted boxes.
Misprinted boxes. In other words, in the time of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, Philadelphia was a tremendous center for manufacturing. And there were many, many different businesses. And anybody who needed boxes internally, they didn't care what they said. They didn't care if they were used or new. And that was kind of where my father got his start.
Wow. And it just came to him, I guess.
Well, he developed it. But what was interesting is there was a repetitiveness to the used boxes and some of the job lot boxes he would buy. But the interesting thing is, at some point, he couldn't supply that to a customer calling. So he started to carry stock boxes. So he would carry boxes that were brand new and that were generic sizes. And so if he had a customer call up and say, I need 500 boxes, he would send what he had in stock.
Where did he get them?
He would buy from major manufacturers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So he was buying new boxes from major manufacturers. He was buying misprints or obsolete from major manufacturers.
So in essence, he became a distributor.
Basically a distributor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then one day did he say, I should be making these boxes?
You know what? He never did. My father was not thinking broadly about expanding his business. By the time he was in middle age, I think he was satisfied. He was making a good living, comfortable living. And I think his horizons were not to do something different. And I don't think he wanted to have a lot of employees, which was something that my brother, who took over the business when my father got sick, was the same thing. He really didn't like having a lot of employees. He didn't want to deal with employee issues.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I think you and I feel differently.
Yes.
Since we both have had many, many employees. So what was the spark that created really Acme Corrugated Boxes it is now?
What happened is when I joined my brother, first of all, I went to Penn State University. Then I went into the Army for 6 months. I was in the reserves. I came out in November of 1969 and started to work almost immediately. And my brother was content to do what we were doing, but I wasn't content. And I said to my brother, if we're not going to make something, I'm probably going to opt out of the business. My educational background and what I was trained to be was a history teacher. I was going to teach history on a secondary high school level. That was what I was in liberal arts, and my focus was history, and I thought I would teach it. But when I came into the business, I said to my brother, I have to make something tangible. I can't just buy something and sell it. I have to make something. So.
Okay. Then the next step was?
I continued the business as it was. I would buy misprinted goods. I would buy new boxes. But my first foray into manufacturing was in 1973. If people remember the oil embargo from 73 and 79, well, I was servicing customers. I would buy boxes from manufacturers and then resell them. And those manufacturers were now holding me out 5 and 6 weeks for delivery, where normal delivery was anywhere between a week and 2 weeks. And so I called one of my suppliers who was close to our family, and I said, and you have to remember, there was almost rationing of corrugated at this point because of the oil embargo.
Yeah, there was rationing of oil.
Almost everything.
Yeah, it was terrible.
So I called this family friend and I said, would you support me if I started to manufacture? And he said I would, which was heartening because I really wanted to make a product. So I bought my first letterpress to make corrugated boxes in 1973.
Oh, okay. So then, did you have a factory? Did you have a location?
Well, we had a location in North Philadelphia. We started off in an old city. My dad had about 4 warehouses surrounding the Betsy Ross house. Mm-hmm. And it was very industrial there, very kind of light industrial. And we moved to American Street in North Philadelphia
I remember that.
in 1970. And we were there for 10 years. And I started manufacturing there. We had about 25,000 square feet. I maintained our stock business, but I also started to buy what we would call corrugated sheets to convert into boxes. And so I would have to, again, buy from major producers my base stock so I could make boxes. And in the corrugated box business, everything is made to order. So every job is new and separate.
Do you have, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I want to stay in the history.
Sure.
Since you're a history
Major.
major. History too. By the way, I was an anthropology major.
Yeah.
You know.
We see where we both ended.
Exactly. There wasn't a lot of jobs. I looked, anthropology, not a lot of jobs. But anyway, so here you are. You're beginning to make your first boxes.
Right.
Somebody calls you and says, Burt, I need a 12 by 10 box, right? And I need 1,000 of them.
Right.
Okay. How does that work? Does the machinery readjust?
Yes. I mean, the equipment I started was very primitive. To where we are now is like light years from where I started. You had hand tools that would move all the different slotting and scoring sections of the machine. The print cylinders were actually wood print cylinders. We used rubber dies, rubber plates for printing. Very primitive. And we would do processing in 3 or 4 different ways. We would make the box. It would be flat. We'd have to join it, either tape it or glue it, and then we would prepare it for shipment to the customer. So we were very small in an industry that was dominated by multiple box plants in the region. Just to give you an idea, today I have fewer than 5 major competitors, independent competitors between Baltimore and New York. When I started, there were probably 50 competitors in that same region.
Wow.
Yeah. They either merged, they either went out of business, they were bought out, and we are a survivor. And the other competitors I have that are survivors, I consider very strong competitors because they've lasted through the years.
Yeah.
And that wasn't easy. It certainly wasn't easy.
So in other words, all these other competitors were boxed out of the business.
In a manner of speaking. Yes, in a manner of speaking.
So
yeah.
To our listeners and viewers, scoring, there's some terms that you may not get. You may think it's like scoring is we had 1,000 boxes, now we scored another 1,000 boxes. It is.
Well, let me explain. If you get a box from Amazon and you open the flaps, the swiveling of the flap is based on a score, and the way a box meets up at the corners is based on a slot.
Right.
Okay. And the equipment, that's the primary way a box is made. There's also, we do die cutting and things like that, which is that's done with tooling. But for the most part, most of the boxes that you receive are what we call regular slotted cartons, and they are generically made on, right now I have 8 converting lines, so 8 modern converting lines. So we have a possibility of running it. A lot of the items can be run on multiple machinery. Some are very specific, and we can talk about that later. So.
Okay. And you have a large facility now.
We moved from North Philadelphia to Bensalem. Excuse me. We had 60,000 square feet in Bensalem. Eventually, I added another 35,000 square feet in a separate facility in the same industrial park. And then in 2001, right before 9/11, we moved to Hatboro. We integrated our manufacturing. I started to make our own, from paper, I started to make our own board. And so the equipment to make it's called a corrugator, and it takes different basis weight paper and combines it through heat and cornstarch to make board, and that board is then processed further to make a box.
Listen, don't throw out your corn cobs. Don't throw them out, everybody. Okay, so.
And by the way, it's very interesting because corn, it really is a commodity priced, And one year it is expensive, and one year it's not so expensive.
Right.
It depends on the yield in the crop. So
it is amazing because corn is used for so many different things.
Yeah.
We don't even think about it. So now you're in Horsham, right?
yeah, well,
Pennsylvania.
it's called Hatboro where we're at.
Hatboro. Okay, that's right. Some people.
But
call
it's
it
upper
Hatboro.
it's upper moreland.
Yeah, yeah. It's Upper Moreland, Hatboro, and Horsham.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Very close.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been to your place, as you know, and by the way, I have to say this, that Burt was very kind. We graduated high school together, and we used to have our meetings at Burt's place, and it was wonderful, and I want to thank you for that. To gather all our people and find out who's still around and figure things out. But so you're there, you're in Hatboro, Horsham, Upper Moreland, okay, and you have it's larger than.
Well, the original building was 234,000 square feet.
Wow.
About 12,000 square feet of offices, and frankly, when I moved there, I didn't know how we would fill it. I mean, it was cavernous. A corrugator, at the time I had two corrugators. A corrugator is about 100 yards long, about a football field long. The latest iteration of the corrugator I have now is a very modern machine that is about a football field and a half long.
Wow.
Yeah. So what you really do is you have a process where you have rolls of paper. They can be anywhere between 6,000 and 9,000 pounds, and they're kind of unspooled by the corrugator and then joined through steam and starch to make board. And at the end of the process, the scoring is done, horizontal scoring, and the cutting of the paper is done. And then it's stacked. And now presently we used to move it with forklift trucks. Right now we move it with automated carts, automated transfer carts.
Wow.
So there's no human intervention between the corrugator and converting at this point.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's all automated. It's all automated.
That's fantastic.
By the way, most of the automation comes from Europe. There's a lot of reasons for that, but they do more to eliminate labor than any other continent, as far as trying to minimize the amount of human interaction with machinery.
For safety reasons, or just to do it?
I think because of the socialist nature of
Yeah.
the way it's very difficult. I guess you have employees you just can't fire people. It's very difficult.
Yes,
so.
I, as you know, I've been to Europe many times.
Right.
I've spoken in Europe. I've taught in Europe, in Germany. I get it. I
Yeah,
get it,
if they don't have to hire somebody, they'd rather not hire somebody.
Right.
It's just a different mentality than the United States.
And they have to retire at 65.
Well, in France, it could be earlier. And actually, when Greece had their economic crisis, it was because everybody was retiring at 50, and everybody was on the dole, and that's one of the reasons they had such a trouble with their economy.
Can you imagine everybody in the United States retiring at 50?
Well, I can't imagine, but Europeans have a different sensibility. There's no question.
There's a different mindset here.
Yeah.
And some of my friends in Europe love it. They love coming here. They love the ability to say, I want to start a business. I want to do. It is a different mindset.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about an American story, I mean, I don't bleed red, white, and blue, but I should, because in almost one generation we went from poverty to being a very successful business. It involved a lot of hard work, but again, where else in the world can you do that? I mean, you can't do that. With all the negatives that my father had to deal with, no education, his ethnicity, the prejudice that was surrounded that, to build a business and to build a reputation of an honest business, and to be admired by your peers. In fact, one of the recognitions I get in business is being admired and being recognized by my peers that we have a significant business and we're a tough competitor, and I appreciate being that. So
it's great. It does say a lot about America.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'll never forget. I was teaching a class at Temple, and I had 8 students from France, and it was an entrepreneur type of class. I don't remember the exact title. And I said to the class, I said, you can go home tonight, form an LLC online, get your EIN number, and be in business tonight or tomorrow. Okay, build a website and everything else, and that's it. And the kids from France said we wouldn't be able to do that in France.
I'll tell you a better one. I have about 6 converting lines that are French, Swiss engineered, French manufactured. And when those crews come over to the United States, they work the same way they work in France. They work 35 hours and they're done. They're done.
Wow.
And my people will work whatever they need to work.
Yeah.
So, but it's a cultural thing. You saw the riots they had when they were going to change the age of retirement.
Yeah, and when they strike, they can be driving and the roads may be packed. And wait, the thing starts at 12. I'm out of my truck.
Right.
They block everything.
Yeah. It's very much a different sensibility and a different mentality. But I think we should admire the fact that America allows people to change their circumstance if they want to change their circumstance, and that leads me into some of the charities that I do work with. I cannot stand victimhood. I cannot stand people saying you can't do something. I think the worst word in the English language is no. I know in business people used to tell me you can't do this, you can't do that. And I always found a way to work around that because I didn't understand no as a reason. And I think for the kids that we mentor, my wife and I mentor a bunch of kids with scholarships, et cetera. These are kids that want to excel. In fact, on my website, I have a young woman who is the first person, and she's from Camden. She's the first person in her family to go to college. Not only did she go to college, she's taking a master's degree in business at Rutgers University. She is on an honor society. And what was really gratifying, she had 2 people to invite to this honor society event, and she invited my wife and myself. She didn't invite her mother. So it was really gratifying because she embodies everything that I think is so important today for these kids. Level the playing field, but if you want it, you have to go grab it.
I totally agree. And by the way, folks, Camden is Camden, New Jersey.
Yes.
So if you're listening from wherever, whatever place you are, and I think I know what high school she went to, right? Am I right? Was she Cristo Rey?
Well, she didn't go to Cristo Rey. There's another organization I'm involved in with called Hope Works, and they started in Camden. They're in Philadelphia too, and they basically teach kids how to code, how to do websites, et cetera. But they've expanded, and a lot of the kids now that we've offered scholarships to are going to Rutgers, they're going to Rowan University, they're going to Camden County Community College. But these are kids that want to. They don't want limitations.
Right.
And I think if we can help people like that, then we make the community better. And I know it sounds like a Pollyanna, and believe me, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I do understand that if you can raise up people's life expectancies, the expectations they have for themselves, you serve the whole community in doing that.
There's no doubt about that. And you do some amazing things. Because where was I with Sister Mary?
It was your Sister Ann.
Sister Ann.
Sister Ann at Mercy Neighborhood Ministries.
Yes, I was with Sister Ann at Mercy Neighborhood.
I brought you over there. I remember.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You did. And actually, one of my student organizations was about to work with them. We were going to do things for GEDs and stuff like that. And then COVID hit. Everything was set up, and then COVID hit, and that was it. They couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I couldn't imagine myself working with Catholic charities or Catholic organizations 20 years ago. And I would say a lot of the focus of what I do today surrounds formerly Catholic schools, because frankly, they're the ones that stayed put in the inner city. They're the ones that decided we could have an impact on the people that live in the inner city. And I think, having grown up in Philadelphia like you did, Dan, we're sensitive to other people's frailties. We're sensitive to other people's disadvantages, and if we can help, I think that's what we do. It's not for accolades or recognition on our part, but it's really to make the society better, the community better. In fact, I wish the people that are always railing about all the things that are bad with America and the racism or whatever you want to call it, why not work towards eliminating by getting people to the middle class, getting people to jobs, getting people to education. That's the way. I think as Jews we always understood education was the only way out for us. It was something that nobody could take away from you.
My grandmother always told me.
And I think it's still true. And it's true for all these kids.
It is. It's true for everybody, any ethnicity.
Absolutely.
And I always tell my students, I'll do anything for you, anything, in any way that I can to help you out, as long as you're a good student. So if you prove to me that you're a good student, you can ask me anything. I'll connect you with people. I'll do whatever you want. Within limits, obviously, but I'll help you out. And years later, I still hear from them.
It's really interesting. I served on the board at Cristo Rey High School for about 8 years. Cristo Rey is a high school that is a great model. It's a Jesuit high school that started out with the idea of having their students have rigorous academics, but also one day a week in the general workforce, either profit or nonprofit. And these are kids that are academically inclined, and it's so gratifying when you go and see where they end up at school. The Cristo Rey is now about 11 years in existence, and every kid that is matriculated at Cristo Rey has been accepted to a university program. Not all of them gone,
right?
But they've all been accepted. So that speaks volumes about the impact. And by the way, the school is 95% minority. 70% of the students are single parent families. So these are kids that maybe would be destined to fail if they went to public schools. Mm-hmm. But in a school like Cristo Rey, they get tremendous attention. They get psychological support. They have a support system. And the expectation is that you're going to have high academics and high academic ability. And by expecting that, you get it. If your expectation is, you get it. So
it's interesting because there was an interim president at Temple, Joanne Epps, who sadly passed away.
I remember that.
Yeah, at a funeral service, actually.
Oh, really?
A commemorative service, and she had a heart attack, I think, on stage, and I knew her, and she was also a good friend of our classmate Ronnie Donatucci, may he rest in peace.
Yes.
And she would say they honored her by then calling her after her death a full president, and she would say, the cure for cancer can be right here in North Philadelphia, but we just don't give the people a chance.
Right. Well, I always felt that you have two outcomes for minority kids. They can be wasted human beings, or they can be predators, or you can make them productive. I mean, the third option is the best option, where they get an education and they see the opportunities.
Right.
I think some of these kids in the drug trade are probably very smart, but there's no opportunity for them. And so, they go to what the street has to offer.
Yeah, and years ago, I was on a committee called the African American Law Enforcement Community Center, and I was to teach entrepreneurship. And one of the heads of it was Sylvester Johnson, who was at the time assistant police commissioner, and then he became police commissioner of
I think I remember him, yes.
Yeah, a wonderful guy. And we were having dinner, a bunch of us, and he talked about drug dealers. And he said, you realize, of course, that drug dealers are just entrepreneurs selling something illegal. So if we could give them the opportunity to sell something where they could make a substantial living that's legal, they'd be great at it. Because they know distribution, right? They know sales. They know how to hire people. They know all these things, except they're dealing with something that will get them in prison.
Well, the interesting thing about the Cristo Rey kids, they really have an opportunity to get out of their neighborhoods. See, a lot of times, these kids never get out of their neighborhood.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of times the dress and affectations are to live in those neighborhoods without getting, accosted. In fact, it's very different. What I learned, I'm involved in another organization called JEVS, and they run a program called Project WOW. And the idea behind the program is kids between 18 and 25 that drop out of high school, that get lost in life, and they bring them in, and they teach them basic skills, basic building skills, trades, basic trades, and they get their GED. And a lot of times when these kids start out, it's run by a Latina woman she's terrific. And a lot of times when these kids start out, they can't look you in the eye, because looking somebody in the eye maybe will cause a problem for them in the neighborhoods. They don't know how to present themselves. And through this program, they learn how to shake your hand, they learn how to look you in the eye, they learn how to articulate things, to speak, to do a little bit of public speaking. So important. In life, the way you speak is the way you're perceived.
It's true.
And so if you can make them understand, and you're dressed too, if you can make them understand the impact of those things, I think it leads to a better pathway.
There's no doubt about it. I've worked with JEVS, and it's a wonderful organization. It's interesting. Tell you a little story. Of course, I'd rather hear you talk about your history and your life. But years ago, I had a friend, and she was from Oklahoma, and she was a teacher in Oklahoma, at elementary school, I think, I think a high school teacher, and if I remember correctly, and she said that her students were almost all Native Americans. And she was a counselor. That's what it was. She was a counselor to them. And another friend came in of hers and became a counselor too. And she said to my friend, "Why won't they look me in the eye, all my students that I'm counseling?" And she said, because in the Native American culture, if they look you in the eye, it's a sign of disrespect. So this woman was taken aback. She didn't know that. So one of the things that you have to do, and JEVS does well, Cristo Rey does well, is understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Understand their culture. Understand why they act that way, so that to get them into, as you were saying, the greater good of this country, and where they can work and make a living and have a family, is to tell them that their culture is okay in certain areas, but to make the shift, they have to unlearn certain things to relearn, to get into the...
Well, I agree. In fact, sometimes I worry about these kids living in neighborhoods where education is not valued, and it's looked down upon.
Yeah.
And these kids have to rise above so many issues. I mean, they have to rise above the neighborhood. They have to rise above the prejudices against education and succeeding in a look. Our culture is mostly white dominated, because obviously that's. I mean, if you look back 40 or 50 years when we were growing up, it was pretty much a white society.
Yeah.
So, they're the other, and that takes some time to learn how to live with that. And fortunately, I think we've come a long way. I know people think we haven't come long enough, but I think we've come a long way. And I think if you want success, if you're willing to do the work, it's there for you.
Yeah, for everybody.
I believe that. Yes.
I say the same thing. If I had my other company, the company that I no longer own, I tell my students I'd hire you all. My students are very diverse. That university is very diverse. And they're great. They're great kids. It doesn't matter what background they come from or what ethnicity.
Well, I think in business, you can be purple, you can be green. If you're capable, that's what you're looking for, competency.
Right. Yes.
So in fact, in the way I view business, is if somebody shows me competency, and capability, I give them autonomy. I don't micromanage anybody, because first of all, you take away somebody's initiative if you micromanage them.
Absolutely.
You know.
I was just speaking to one of my classes yesterday, and I said to them, do you know what a micromanager is? And some of them shook their head, and I said, it's a very, very, very tiny person. You can barely see
very
them.
small, very
small. You know, I hope you know what a micromanager is, folks. It's somebody that actually pays you while they're still doing your job. They oversee everything. It's like they're over your shoulder telling you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It's bizarre.
I'll tell you, it's very interesting. My middle son is my general manager. He's very smart, very capable, but he's sometimes impatient with people, and he jumps in. And I said to him, you, first of all, when you jump in, you're emasculating the other person. You really have to let them. Yeah. You have to let them do what they're doing, and if they're not doing it right, you call them in and you talk to them about what they could do better. But you try to keep everything positive. I found that in business, going negative is the worst thing you can do with people.
Absolutely.
Because people just roll up in a ball when they think they're doing something wrong, and they think you're overseeing them, and everything they do may be wrong. You've got an ineffective person, and even if they're smart, and smart people will leave if they feel that kind of micromanaging. Mm-hmm. They're gonna leave, because they know you don't trust their instincts. So anyway, what I was telling my son is, sometimes you got to step back, even if you think somebody's doing something wrong. Step back and let them make the mistake, and then talk to them about it. Mm-hmm. But I just think he gets anxious. And because he's responsible and he wants to be responsive.
I get it. Yeah. So it's a fine balance.
Yes, it definitely a fine balance.
But failure is how people learn.
Absolutely. I think failure causes humility.
Yeah.
I had a second business in the 80s, and it was a failure. And it taught me humility, and it taught me that, you can be smart and you can do everything right and still fail.
Yeah, it's true.
So
it's true.
So
some of the greatest businesses are built on failures.
Milton Hershey.
Right.
Milton Hershey went bankrupt, I think, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Before he established Hershey Foods.
The Hershey bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a very interesting thing in itself.
Yeah.
And we view it a certain way. The Europeans view the Hershey bar in another way.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So, as we were talking before we were filming.
Sure.
You make a lot of boxes for all kinds of people. I mean, you have a big area, right? You sell.
We ship in about a 5-state region.
Okay. Yeah. How has Amazon and other direct to the consumer businesses impacted your business?
Well, I think during the pandemic, we saw our business soar because everything was coming in boxes, everything. And we're not a direct seller to Amazon, nor would I want to be. Amazon buys on different levels. They buy huge amounts of product. But over the last 2 years, they've made a concerted effort to use less and less of my product. So in other words, anybody watching this, you're probably getting almost everything they can in soft goods. Either plastic bags or padded craft bags. The freight's less. But, the problem is, and also they try to use the manufacturer's box for shipment. In other words, I think what Amazon does is, if you order a pair of shoes, if the manufacturer can ship it in their own box to you without Amazon touching it, they're just as happy to do it that way. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So the consumption of Amazon on boxes has probably decreased quite a bit. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of mergers in my industry, and I think a lot of closures of big mills. Now, a paper mill can be a million and a half square feet. I mean, they're huge machines, and they usually cost in the realm of a recycled paper machine today probably costs $300 or $400 million. $300
or $400
million. $300 or $400. That's for a recycled machine. For a craft machine where they use virgin pulp or virgin chips, those machines probably are $2 billion, and you can't even put them up anymore because of environmental issues.
Well, wait a minute. When you say recycled machines. You
Right.
mean machines that work with recycled paper?
Yes, in other words, all the collections that the municipalities do.
Right.
When you go to a supermarket and you see they have a baler in the back where they have bales
Yeah.
of, all that's getting repulped.
Okay.
It's almost like a big slurry, a big mixer, and they take all the impurities out, the inks, the plastics, everything, and then if you look at that machine, you have the way paper is made is you have 95% water and fiber when you start, and by the time you're at the back end of the machine, you have 95% paper and 5% moisture, water.
Wow.
So they have papers made through a screening where fibers join together, then they're pressed together by these big drums. They're heated, and then at the end of the cycle for containerboard, the paper comes out as about 95% pure paper.
Wow. So I just wanted to clarify that it's the paper that's recycled, not the machine.
No, machinery is usually new.
Right.
There's only 2 or 3 companies in the world that make paper machines. And then you have the issue, which a lot of people probably don't think about. Do you read a newspaper anymore? Do you buy a newspaper, or do you go online to read the news?
Once in a great while, I'll read a newspaper.
Okay.
Most of the time, I'm online.
Okay. So multiply that by somebody who's 30 years old. They get all their information online.
Right.
So the fact that the reason I'm mentioning is newspaper machines that made newsprint. They've lost most of their business. About, I would say, there's 20% of what of production of newsprint that if you compare with 15 years ago.
Wow.
And so when you have a $200 million machine and you're making newsprint, you have to do something with it. You can't scrap it.
Right.
So a lot of times the default product is packaging products because brown paper is still pretty much used. And now with the banning of plastic bags for groceries and stuff like that, you're seeing a resurgence of craft bags and recycled bags in the supermarkets. So
These are things that the average person doesn't think
you don't
about.
think about it. No.
And
why would you? You
Right.
you go to the supermarket, there's bags, you just pack your goods.
And $300 million to buy a machine? Wow.
I would say to buy a machine
Wait.
buy a machine and set it up and buy the facility, you're talking $500 million.
$500 million.
Yeah.
Wow. Reminds me of the time they wanted me to buy the Phillies. They called me, but they wanted $300 down. I said, "What are you guys insane?" No, but it's funny though.
So it's very you can't. The only people that can build, either rebuild old machines or buy new machines are guys with deep pockets.
Georgia Pacific.
Georgia Pacific is one of the major producers.
Right.
They're much more in tissue and toilet paper than they are in containerboard. But there's a company in our industry called Smurfit Westrock.
Oh yeah.
And that's a combination of 2 gigantic companies, one European, one domestic, and that's a $34 billion company. So there's 4 or 5 companies that dominate our industry.
You brought up, since you know so much about paper, right, and corrugation and everything else, what happens, and I don't mean this facetiously,
Sure.
I mean it,
Sure.
when we go through our sewage systems and all that toilet paper is there, do they recycle the toilet paper?
No, I don't think so. I think
What
that
happens to it?
that breaks down. I think toilet
Does it?
paper breaks down, and I really don't know if it breaks down to the extent that they can concentrate the byproduct from that. I really
Right.
don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah, I couldn't speak to that, but I will tell you that building products, stuff that comes out of demolition.
Right.
And I know you had Carl on. A lot of that stuff can be recycled. A lot of the sheetrock and
Right.
and certainly all the metals and all the steel and all the other stuff can be recycled. Yeah, which I think there are companies that do that.
Oh yeah.
That take construction waste and just separate it.
Yeah.
So-
And repurpose it.
Repurpose it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, what do you see the future for your company, corrugated boxes, the paper business?
Well, it's interesting. We've grown very nicely. My 3 sons are in the business.
That should be the name of a
My 3 sons.
My 3 sons.
Yeah, I think it was
a series, TV
where's
series.
Fred McMurray when you need him, right?
That's right. He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. He's like a lot of other people we grew up watching. No, my sons. We have a great platform. We have a state-of-the-art facility. We have a lot of good customers. We have a lot of loyal customers. I think we do a good job for most of our customers. And business is a perpetuation, and it's seeing where opportunities lie.
Right.
And I think as an entrepreneur, and Danny, you're an entrepreneur too, I think, I'm always looking out for the next thing. The problem becomes as you age, it's not that you lose enthusiasm for growing, but it may some of the things are starting to bypass. Some of the things start to bypass you. The technology is moving so fast.
Correct.
That I'm a great believer. I can understand what technology can do, but I fell off the technology train a long time ago. So.
Yeah, it didn't even stop for me at the station, but that's why Peter, Alex, people that grew up with this technology, and so I need help. Sometimes I'll sit there and I go, I need help. It's like, why is my computer working slow?
Yeah.
And then I'll make a call and they'll say, well, do this, and it's done.
Well, I will tell you that the greatest threat to businesses today are not the normal. There's always dangers, but cybersecurity. We spend tremendous money on protection and protecting ourselves, because I've seen the damage that these guys can do. There was a large company in our industry, about a $5 billion company, that was hacked, ransomware, and they were down for almost 3 months, doing things manually for 3 months.
Wow.
You can't even imagine the cost, not only the cost of being out, but the cost of missed product that they probably didn't bill, and
missed opportunity cost.
Yes.
And that's
tremendous.
One of those things that when we talk about turnover, when you have to let somebody go or somebody quits, people don't realize you have lost opportunity costs. You got to find people to replace them. You got to train those people.
Tremendous cost in that.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous. And by the way, we had Aaron Crossan on 3 or 4 episodes ago, and he talked about cybersecurity because he's a cybersecurity consultant, and he actually gave us a situation. Those of you who follow us know the situation. It was a pizza company. They had a guy come in who was, I don't know, a pizza delivery guy or was doing something, and went into the company and put a USB port in their computer.
Oh yeah.
Installed all the information, took it out.
Yeah. If you have a big company, one of the things, we do cybersecurity training, and one of the things in a large company, somebody can walk in, nobody knows who they are, they go into a side office and there's a computer terminal there and they plug in and you're done. Look, just one wrong click and you can be done.
Yeah, one wrong click.
So
yeah.
So we do a lot of training of our employees. Anything that looks suspicious, anything that's questionable. And now with AI, people mimicking
your
voices and also personas, and it's maddening. And I've seen it. My old CFO, who was very good, he once he was wiring out $49,000 for a piece of equipment, except there was no purchase order or anything, and he caught himself because I would have gone in and told him. I would have said, "Hey, there's a wire that has to go out.
Right.
They're going to call you," and we were able to bring it back, but it almost lost $49,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just.
Wow.
And I just had my president CFO. He had a string of emails that looked like they came from me, talking about an invoice that we were supposed to pay. It was like the same thing, like $40,000 to a company I never heard of. But they showed emails to me back and forth. So it's insidious.
Wow.
It's insidious, and it's very dangerous for companies. And I can see where there's a tremendous potential for fraud.
It's huge. That's why if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer.
Oh, yeah.
I just swipe it out.
Yeah.
If I don't recognize the email, even if I recognize it, as you were saying, I click on the person sending it, and it usually is some bizarre thing right away, block and so forth.
Yeah.
And if by chance you get a phone call that you think is somebody you know, but it doesn't come up, my thing is, if there's the slightest chance, I don't answer it. But if it's a situation where I speak in a different voice. I know it's weird. It's like, hello. Or I'll speak in, I speak a couple languages. I'll speak in a different voice, in a different language. Just so they can't copy but usually I don't even answer.
Well, the first thing, as soon as I don't know who's on the phone, and they start pitching me, I say, "What are you selling?" And that is going to be a very short conversation.
Right.
What's happened recently is I've been getting calls from California, Las Vegas, Michigan. It's the same company, but they somehow they route other calls. They're trying to lend me money.
Oh yeah, I get that text.
Yeah.
So all this stuff, because we're talking about the future of business, all this stuff can disrupt your business, just like you said, in a click.
It can be very disruptive, and I'm not sure what you do to protect yourself other than you really have to go through the paces. We actually have these, in fact, I just did it yesterday. We have these programs where you have to go through and then answer questions about different potential attacks, how people attack. Like you said, the USB port.
Yeah.
So all you can do is be aware, and there's not much you can do. And we may have 70 people on computers, so it only takes one mistake.
Yeah. Wow. It's like.
So what you're trying to do, what our IT people try to do is isolate. If somebody penetrates, you try to isolate it so it doesn't get into your main business.
So as Acme Corrugated Box grows, where do you see it growing? In what areas?
Well, geographically, we're kind of stuck because our product is bulky and not expensive, based on
Right. I see your trucks.
Yeah.
You got big.
Yeah,
big
we
trucks.
have a lot of trucks on the road, but it's. I think the growth is either organic, where you grow internally, or you grow by acquiring somebody, or you grow by a greenfield startup. I mean, that's the possibilities that you look at.
And from a customer standpoint?
I think, my experience in a competitive nature of the business is that the bigger companies, as they get larger, they get farther away from the customer.
Correct.
So there's a lot of opportunity for us with even mid-size or large-size companies that are in the region. It's very hard to sell what we call national accounts that buy in California and they buy in Michigan, and we'd have to partner up with other independents. So a lot of times you're kind of pushed out. You don't have access to that business, but regional business we do pretty well with. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think growth. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're always looking to grow. And I think business is like a shark. You can't be still. And if you really decide that you can't grow, or you don't want to grow, or you want to change your lifestyle or whatever, then you have to get out. I think
it's the term I use, and I've used it in a number of episodes. Is being an entrepreneur is a disease. It's a dis-ease, a constant state of not being at ease.
Right.
So you're always looking for the next thing.
I think I've lived with anxiety my whole life, and it pushes me, it pulls me back, and it pushes me.
Right.
It's like a yin and a yang, and it's just a personality trait. But the main thing for me is always I wanted to be better every day from the day before. I wanted my company to be better. I wanted us to be a good company where people really enjoyed their jobs, where we respected people so that they felt comfortable and they could make decisions. I think it's important for people to get recognition in a business. I also think it's important for them to feel empowered, that they can make a decision within their bailiwick, within their their job description.
I agree. And you, if I'm not mistaken, you've hired interns and stuff in college and universities.
Yeah. We had some great interns this summer. We had a kid from Temple he was, I think, Albanian. And he was amazing. I think he's working part-time for us. What I've learned from the students is they ask questions about why. You know, you hear about the 5 whys.
Right.
Well, a lot of times by challenging the current wisdom, you learn something. They don't have to know anything. They just have to say, why are we doing that? And I think that a smart businessman will say, you know what? Maybe they have something. Maybe they've seen something we didn't see. Maybe we're so used to doing things a certain way that there's a better way to do them. I embrace change. I think a lot of people don't like change. They get stagnant. They don't want to be challenged. But I want to be challenged, and I want to challenge the people that work for me to do more. If we can do more, let's do more. Let's do it better. Let's do it. Let's be great with our customers. Let's make sure that communication isn't a problem with our customers. Let's make sure they feel valued.
And that's what a lot of students bring. A lot of students ask questions. Why are you doing it this way? Or what do I need to do this? How can I get better at that? And it irks me sometimes when I hear people say that Gen Z, I guess it is, they don't perform, they don't do this. And it's like, why would you put a whole group of people?
Well, it's just stereotyping, and I think it's very wrong. This summer we had a young woman from Lehigh. We had a young man from Temple and a young man from those two worked together in our maintenance department, and the young man from Villanova worked in manufacturing. The two kids, they were all great, but the two kids that were in our maintenance department were outstanding, and they taught us stuff. They took the academic issues they were learning and they applied it practically to what we were doing, and that's to me that's the best thing you can have is the combination of academics and actual work issues and melding them together to form something better than what you've had.
It's taking theory,
right,
and turning it into practice.
Right.
You know, everything starts with theory. Everything. And I've said this before. You have to say, what if I do this? Right? So that's the theory. But then you have to do it.
Right.
And that's the practice.
Well, for the kids, the light goes off.
Yeah.
Because they can see the practicality of what they're doing because it has an impact immediate. You can see an immediate impact of what they're talking about. So they're learning, and they're seeing a real life situation. They're seeing a real work situation, and they're applying their knowledge to those issues that crop up. You know, manufacturing is not fully precise. There's always some variables in it, but
I know.
And the human variable is one of the things, but also, you know, the equipment that you supply your people. Like my people come in every day to make boxes. The question is, am I going to help them make boxes, or am I going to put obstacles in their way to make boxes?
It's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the students, the interns, are learning, but they're also teaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And if, matter of fact, when we have students from Cristo Rey that spend one day a week at our facility, and what I was going to say is, not only do they get experience, but my people really join with those kids and really learn something from them too. You know, they take them under their wing. It's really a very nice thing to see.
It's
really
a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is.
You're doing great stuff.
Well,
great stuff, Burt.
Well, I think, you know, what is that biblical expression? To those much is given, much is expected. I know I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But I believe that. I mean, we're blessed, and I'm blessed, and I'm not holier than thou. See, I believe in spirituality. I don't really believe in religion per se, but I believe there has to be something more than just material goods, just a quest for material goods. And I think if you can impart that to the children coming out, they're going to be better human beings, and they're going to be more productive human beings.
I totally agree with you. I feel the same way. I feel the same way when I'm teaching my students, when I'm working with my students, and then when I work with the people on this podcast, it's the same. Yeah. Let them come up with ideas.
Yeah.
Help me out. I'll help you. You help me.
Well, I think learning goes both ways.
Yeah.
I think when you hire somebody, you think, oh, I'm the boss. What do they know? But I think that's a parochial way of looking at things.
Exactly.
I think that sometimes a kid will challenge you with something and say, why are you doing it that way? And they're right. They're right. It's just you're doing it out of rote. You're doing it out of rote.
Right.
You didn't think
Correct.
about it.
Yeah. It's very interesting because and we had somebody here, I guess it was last week or the week before, or I think most of the people that are guests on this show have said something around the fact that the people who work where they work and they may own the business, they work with them. Those people don't work for them, they work with them. And that's the difference.
Look, I think, Danny, people know who I am. They know I'm the boss.
Yeah,
do I have to tell them I'm the boss? In fact, I had a supervisor. One day I pulled him in because he threatened to fire people. And I called him in. I said, they know you can fire them. You don't have to tell them you can fire them.
Right.
That shouldn't be a threat that you like. It's a sort of Damocles on their head. Right. So there's no need for you to say that. The idea is to get the most out of people, not to threaten them. Threaten them is, and in my culture, there's no finger pointing. If we do something wrong, let's just not do it again.
Correct.
To do the blame game, I think is an egotistical exercise. I think a lot of times people want to blame somebody because they want to show that they're in charge or their boss, and all that to me is nonsense. It's negative, and I don't think it. I think it detracts from a business atmosphere where you want to move positively you want everybody swimming in the same direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I to your point that you made, I remember one time one of my people that worked with me said, and you're my boss, here's my boss. And it struck me so weirdly that somebody said that. And I said, I guess I am, but you can call me Dan, I
got a funny story. When I go out on sales calls, I'm the president, right?
Right. But
sometimes my salesmen will say, they're really impressed that you came out. And I'm looking around, I'm saying, who are they impressed with? I don't feel that way. I don't feel it. If I'm on a sales call, I'm there to help the salesman.
Right.
I'm not thinking about, gee, I'm impressive to the guy because I actually showed up to his office, So there is a hierarchy of the way people think about things. And sometimes you don't feel the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you came up through the trenches.
Yeah.
We all did.
Well, a lot of times I think some of the anxiety I have is sometimes I like to have my anonymity, and sometimes when you're the head of an organization, you really have to do things that maybe as a person who's quiet or doesn't want to do.
Right.
So.
Ultimately, everything stops with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The buck stops here, and they get it, and everybody knows it. And
you don't have to rub it into people.
No,
I think,
of course not.
I think, you don't have to yell and scream to show you're in charge. I mean, I think there are people that do that.
Yeah.
And they cow people, and they make people concerned about anything they do. And good people will leave. Good people won't put up with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most people leave because of the manager, not because of their, and whoever that manager is, the owner or the district manager or whoever the manager is, the supervisor. It's not about money. Usually, it's not even about their benefits. It's about the person above them who treats them poorly.
How they're treated.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, and sometimes it's you've got good people, and sometimes you have to monitor how you're going to manage one person over another because they're good people, but they maybe don't get along. And
they have different personalities and different behaviors.
Yeah.
As I've said in the past, Charlie Manuel was great at that. The way he would talk to Jimmy Rollins was this. Charlie Manuel was the manager of the Phillies when they won the World Series. He would talk to different players with different behaviors in different ways and get the most out of them and motivate them in different ways. Everybody's different.
Well, I do think in business, it's more about psychology than it is about being a businessman. One of the strengths I think I have is that I can put myself in everybody's shoes.
I agree.
And if you can do that, you can empathize, and you can understand, and you don't have to do. You can say no to people, but you also have to understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
And I think it's a skill, and I think a lot of people don't. It's almost, don't tell me about it, just do what I say in business. And I think a lot of times people just want to be I think recognition is crucial in business.
I totally agree. It's about being empathetic, not being a doormat,
Right.
but having parameters, but caring for people.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And I think sincerity comes through. And in fact, if somebody's trying to sell me, if they're insincere, they don't have a chance with me. Yeah. I mean, you have to be, you have to be confident in your product. You have to be confident in yourself. You have to believe in what you're telling me, and then I can buy product for you. I can deal with you. But in fact, I just got a note from the College of Liberal Arts at Penn State. They have a new fundraiser, and every fundraiser they've had has been awful. So he talked to me about doing some donations for scholarships, which I would be predisposed to do. Except I said the last couple of people have been so insincere fundraising that it just pushed me in the other direction. You could see they didn't really know how to fundraise. They didn't know how to ingratiate themselves the right way.
Right.
And so it was offensive to me more than and it blocked me from doing what I was predisposed to do.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
Weird.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They unsold you.
Yes, exactly. They made me not want to do what I wanted to do.
It's bizarre. But we were happy enough that you wanted to do this. And this was a great show. And you taught everybody so much. Listen, if you're in business, listen to what Burt Cohen said, or Bob Cohen, either one, right? And of course, he goes by.
It's a long story.
It's a long story. But we went to high school together, and he was Burt, but everybody else knows him as Bob. Just listen to this man, because he runs a big business, and he's telling you how to be successful in your business. Take it to heart, listen to him, and you'll have a more successful time with your business, with yourself. It'll be a lot easier for you. Burt, I want to thank you.
Danny, thanks so much.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
I hope it was insightful for people, and
I'm sure it was.
Happy to be here. So.
Glad to have you here, and happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Digging for Gold.